I'm Dr. Duke, and this is CultureCast with Vicki McKenna. Vicki, thanks for joining us this week.
Great to be here.
Well, you know, a lot of people have contacted, my students have asked me, and I know that your listeners have asked you the question, what exactly is gaslighting? It seems to be something that's going on wide scale across the political class and the media class, and a lot of people don't know what it is. What is gaslighting?
Well, and you've heard the phrase too. So in fact, curiously, just in the past few days, I've gotten a few folks saying, you use this word a lot. What does it mean? It is the manipulation of truth and reality that is designed to make you think you're thinking wrong or you're going crazy. Literally in the movie, it's a reference to an old movie where a woman's husband manipulated her perceptions of things to make it think she was going crazy. And so that's kind of the general application of this term is the altering of reality, the altering of truth, and then closing you off from access to any way to check whether or not something you're hearing is true, to make you think that if you mistrust it, you must be the crazy one. And so I think we can identify probably at this point hundreds, if not thousands, of examples if we just sat here for hours.
Well, I think the most perilous to our republic right now is the so-called insurrection. Would this happen, in a moment of spontaneity? We think it happened. But then again, you see all the left-wingers, the Antifa people, the Black Lives Matter that were part of that group who were arrested, who were brought before into the legal system but weren't charged. There are a whole lot of things that went on in that so-called insurrection, which we can't ask questions about. I think gaslighting is the fact that we can't ask questions. If we challenge the liberal narrative about this insurrection, you're going to get frozen out by Twitter and Facebook. You challenge the idea that the election had problems, they're going to shut you down. This is gaslighting at the highest levels.
No, they'll actually start, trying to make your friends think you're nuts, make you start to question whether or not you're perceiving things accurately as well. So you actually, the idea is that it gets you to question yourself. But you're right. So if you looked at what happened on January 6th, this is going to be an event that provides a multitude of examples, going on into the future here for some time. You look at January 6th. Insurrection is the word you hear. Insurrection. It was an insurrection. It was an armed insurrection. It was worse than 9/11. Anderson Cooper last week said it was like the Rwandan genocide. I mean, these are the insane kind of examples and metaphors that are being used to describe what happened on January 6th. So you look at that and you say, I saw a melee. I saw something that actually started to get very close to a riot. I saw people behaving badly. Did I see an insurrection? I didn't see an insurrection. So if I didn't see an insurrection and I say so, then everything around me, if I go on and I Google it, Capitol riot, the word insurrection comes up. And so it's reinforced over and over. The altered version of reality, so that when I, try to get my head around what it really was, I start to think to myself, well, maybe it was an insurrection. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I saw it wrong. Maybe my own lying eyes saw it incorrectly. And if you go to the there's a great Star Trek Next Generation episode where Picard is being told he has to see a certain number of lights, and he refuses to concede to the bent reality. Because he's being told in order to survive, you must adopt this insane reality. And so the first step is to make you think you're losing it, is to make you think you're going nuts. And that the impeachment trial, the ridiculous impeachment trial, you watch that thing and you think it's just nothing more than bad performance art. And you look around you, though, and nobody agrees with you on that. And you can't find like-minded people, so pretty soon you think you must be nuts.
I like your example from Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's also, of course, 1984, that famous Orwell book where the protagonist finds himself being interrogated by Big Brother, and he's holding up his hand, Big Brother, and saying, "How many fingers am I holding up?" And the answer is always 4. And if you answer anything but 4, no matter how many fingers are up, you get punished, because that's the new reality. And you mentioned the impeachment, and I think that is exactly what we saw. The entire premise of impeachment, the whole thing, was about the insurrection. So at the heart of whether or not Donald Trump should be impeached or not is the question of whether or not it was an insurrection. And even many of the Republicans who didn't vote to impeach him, like Mitch McConnell, still basically blamed him for starting an insurrection without without a single shred of evidence. There's not a single shred of evidence to suggest that it actually was an insurrection or that Trump actually supported it and urged it on. I mean, in the end, he was voted not guilty. But even people, like I said, who voted against impeachment are talking, like you said, Vicki, as if it were true. And one thing I'll throw out there is how in the world can you go, the highest legal authority in our country, how can they lie about and alter and change evidence knowingly and willingly? So to us pay no price for it. If you did this in any other, this is the unfairness of this. In any other court in this country, if you manipulated evidence in front of a judge and you were found out to have purposefully changed and lied about evidence, your case would go away, period. And the shame and the consequences would fall on you. There are no consequences for the liberal Democrats who did this, and they're still talking as if they're going to try to do something else to Trump. It's amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, and if you had, or I had manipulated evidence, lied about evidence, doctored evidence, we would go to jail. We'd go to jail. And that kind of gets back to what a lot of Americans, millions and millions of them perceive right now, and that is that the rules don't apply equally across the board. And now we don't know what rules govern us. We're getting to the point now where we're not sure if we're protected by the rule of law. Are we protected by the Constitution? You see these people being socially assassinated. I love this phrase that a listener of mine came up with, social assassination rather than cancel. But you see these people, just random, everyday folks, getting socially assassinated because they posted something questioning the election on Facebook or something of the kind. So you don't quite know what you're permitted to say, what you're permitted to share, whether or not you will be protected by the rule of law, whether or not the rule of law exists, because you see it not applied fairly to all classes of people. And I think that when you see nobody being held accountable, it's not just the impeachment and the doctoring of the evidence during the impeachment trial. Nobody was held accountable for the Russia collusion hoax. Nobody was held accountable for the attacks on Benghazi. Nobody was held accountable for any of the election irregularities. Nobody's ever held accountable in the elite classes of America. The only place you're ever accountable, and sometimes it's for totally benign things, is here in the unwashed masses where you and I swim.
Well, it's also looking like Andrew Cuomo, now that he's been exposed for covering up his murder of thousands and thousands of elderly people by jamming them into nursing homes during COVID. Looks like he's going to skate by with that as well. His own brother, reporting for CNN, completely gaslights the rest of the country by pretending it never happened. And I think there is one reliable rule, though, Vicki, you said, that one thing you can count on for sure, that you're much less likely to pay a price if you're progressive. We have the Disney actress now who's been fired for The Mandalorian for using a Nazi analogy when talking about how the left is behaving. Well, how many high-level Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, have called Trump a Nazi, literally? No consequence for them, but Disney fires her. We also know that there's another director in the stable of Disney producers who used that word just a year ago talking about conservatives. He still got a job. Well, the one thing that does seem to be true, that if you are progressive and liberal progressive, left-wing, you can reasonably bet that this isn't going to happen to you.
Oh, I think that's true. And the progressives who are victims of the social assassination culture, or some call it cancel culture, the way they find themselves running afoul of progressive wisdom is if they're not woke enough, or if they do something that's too close to what we normals think would be acceptable. I'll give you an example, and I cannot remember the host's name because I don't watch the show, but the host of The Bachelor, it's a very popular show from what my girlfriends tell me, was just suspended because he said it should be okay for a contestant on that program who was outed wearing a Southern Belle dress at a fraternity formal in 2018. It should be okay for her to explain herself. Now, I don't know why anybody wearing a Southern Belle dress ought to have to explain herself, but he said it should be okay for her to explain herself. And for that, not woke enough, he's been suspended. I don't know if he's going to be fired, but today's news said he was suspended. So you have to not be woke enough or be someone who is reflecting what we normals think is an okay way of thinking for anybody on the left to ever run afoul of cancel culture.
Well, the problem is that cancel culture is now culture reality. When you look at how the big tech companies, the ones who control our media access, our platforming, they're all progressive, which means they're going about their business canceling people for less and less in terms of their hate crimes and their speeches. It's, as you said, simply wearing a dress now without any other connotation might be enough to get you suspended. So we have no authority over them. We can't vote them out of office. We, the people of the United States, we can't censor other than to not use them, stop using them before they stop using us, at which point we just silence ourselves. What can we do legally? I mean, obviously with the Democrats, they're not going to do anything about this because this benefits them. But even when we had Republicans, I remembered how maddening under the Trump administration, I think 3 times at least, you had Zuckerberg and Dorsey and those guys hauled up in front of Congress, and Ted Cruz and the boys read them the riot act up and down, and then they just kind of glibly sat there with those dead fish eyes that those guys got. No, we're not doing that. Nope, we don't think that's true. And they walked away, and that was the end of that.
And that's it.
They got a good talking to. Yep, that was it.
It was, and I think it was stagecraft. I think those Republicans wanted to speechify because I don't think anybody, I mean, there were some things you could have done when the Republicans still had control. There was altering the application of Section 230 under the FCC, the Telecommunications Act that regulation came out of. Nobody wanted to touch it. And it wasn't just necessarily about ending Section 230. You could have amended Section 230. Our FCC chair at the time, Ajit Pai, wanted to do that, had begun the process of altering the rule using the official mechanisms to do that. It went nowhere. We didn't have Republicans that wanted to actually do anything. We had Republicans that wanted to be very, very effective and noticed for pounding the table. And it hasn't gotten us very far. Look, I don't know what to do. The states could have some impact. I'm encouraging our state legislature to adopt a piece of legislation. Florida has begun to look at this, Texas as well, that says if you are a provider and you are hosting platforms that effectively deny people's free speech or try to socially assassinate people for saying really average things, really regular things, or even just questioning authority, you're not going to be allowed to do business in the state of Wisconsin. But I can't find any legislators who can even appreciate the problem for as having the magnitude that it does. So I don't have a good answer on that. You need lawsuits, you need legislatures. But the problem is, unless you recognize we don't actually have a free marketplace of ideas, and that really bothers you, you're not going to be motivated to do anything. But I'll give you a quick example of how it doesn't even have to be politics to get you banned, to get you censored. I just had a Twitter post censored, and I was shut down from being able to use my Twitter account for 24 hours because I posted an article by a reporter named Cheryl Atkinson, who wondered why nobody was reporting on the deaths associated with the vaccine, with the COVID vaccine. That's all the article was about. And I was banned for 24 hours for tweeting that article. So it's not even necessarily politics that will get you censored. And unless the legislatures and the legal teams out there, the pro bono legal groups out there want to fight it, I don't know. I don't have an answer except to keep trying to find alternatives until we get arrested and re-educated.
Well, and you see how well gaslighting works because you had thousands, literally thousands of sworn signed affidavits all across this country during the election about irregularities, about misbehavior, about downright sneaky dealing when it came to how votes were counted. And along comes this quote unquote insurrection, and that forever kills the possibility that this will be investigated. Anybody who asks that question now, that perhaps the Democrats walked away with an election illegally, nope. The insurrection proves that all the problems the Democrats were right about everything, Republicans are liars and Nazis, and that's the narrative that we're living through today.
And Duke, the planned nature of the riots at the Capitol, it was planned. Nobody wants to release the investigative work that suggests it was planned. We knew that there were law enforcement agencies that had heads up that it was planned. You can actually see it if you can take a look at more than about 60 seconds of a video. You can actually see some of the planning. We know that there were left-wing groups involved as well, and one wonders, was it all designed so that we never talked about those election irregularities?
Well, and of course, all that rioting all summer long where police offices were being invaded, police being expelled from their own buildings, when they were burning down and manipulating and stop roadblocking police from getting out into the street to actually help people, that was okay. That was an insurrection. I mean, they're doing it still. They're still occupying in places like Seattle, public federal buildings. That's not an insurrection. They're using guns and weapons to occupy. And yet what happened at the Capitol, because we can blame it on conservatives, that's the only way to see insurrection.
Oh, and Duke, remember, this gets us back to what we started this segment talking about, and that is gaslighting. The left says it's okay to burn Portland. It's okay to burn federal buildings. It is okay, to lock down Seattle. It's okay to burn Chicago, Kenosha, et cetera, because they're protesting a real, serious problem of police brutality and police racism and systemic racism and white supremacy. And it's not okay to protest a rigged election, because it's not a real problem. So again, you're back to trying to convince people either that their neighbors are crazy or that they themselves are crazy, because they look around and they say, I don't see what you're saying. My reality looks different than yours. Maybe I'm the nutty one.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Most of you know our show is being censored by big tech.
While this makes it harder to meet the cost of producing the show, that's part of it. It also demonstrates that we must be having tremendous success, or they wouldn't bother to try to shut us down.
If you like hearing truth and common sense with a love for freedom, please join the Patriot Club with a one-time $99 tax-deductible donation. And you'll get this sweet vessel of joy as part of a thank you for joining the Patriot Club.
Etched with the American flag and the words freedom never tasted so good.
All you have to do is visit patriotclub.us and become a Patriot member today.
That's patriotclub.us. Thank you and God bless.